Russia sets demands for negotiations with the US on Ukraine.
According to sources familiar with the matter, Russia has sent the US a list of demands aimed at reaching an agreement to end the conflict in Ukraine and re-establish bilateral relations with Washington. Reuters reports that it remains unclear what specific demands Moscow has proposed or whether peace negotiations with Kyiv would depend on accepting these conditions. However, over the past 3 weeks, Russian and US officials have held multiple direct and online discussions regarding these terms. Moscow's demands are described as broad and largely similar to its previous requests to Ukraine, the US, and NATO. Specifically, Russia wants Ukraine to be barred from joining NATO, to commit to prohibiting the stationing of foreign troops, and to have Crimea, along with 4 other provinces, internationally recognized as Russian territory. Additionally, Moscow continues to demand that the US and NATO address what it calls the root causes of the conflict, particularly NATO's eastward expansion, which the Kremlin has long viewed as a security threat. Currently, US President Donald Trump is awaiting a response from Russian President Vladimir Putin regarding the approval of a 30-day ceasefire, a proposal that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has declared as the first step toward peace talks. However, Putin's commitment to this agreement remains uncertain. Meanwhile, some US officials, lawmakers, and experts worry that President Putin, a former KGB officer, could exploit the ceasefire to divide the US, Ukraine, and Europe while undermining the negotiation process. In Kyiv, President Zelensky described this week's meeting between US and Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia as constructive. He emphasized that the 30-day ceasefire could serve as an opportunity to draft a broader peace agreement. At present, the Trump administration has not clearly outlined its approach to negotiations with Moscow. According to sources, Washington and Moscow are engaged in 2 separate sets of talks, one focused on resetting US-Russia relations and another on a peace agreement for Ukraine. However, there appear to be differing views within Trump's administration on the next steps. US Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff stated on CNN that the Istanbul negotiations are highly worth considering and could serve as a guiding framework for achieving a peace agreement. Meanwhile, retired General Keith Kellogg, Trump's top advisor on Ukraine and Russia, holds an opposing view. Speaking at a Council on Foreign Relations event last week, he stated that he does not see the Istanbul Agreement as a suitable starting point. "I think we need to develop a completely new approach," Kellogg emphasized. According to experts, Russia's demands are not just aimed at shaping a final agreement with Ukraine, but also at laying the groundwork for broader agreements with the West, countries that support Kyiv. For the past 2 decades, Moscow has consistently put forward similar conditions to the US, primarily to limit the expansion of Western military presence in Europe. If accepted, these demands could help President Vladimir Putin consolidate and expand Russia's influence on the continent. Corey Sharkey, a former Pentagon official and now Director of Foreign and Defense Policy Studies at the American Enterprise Institute, AEI, noted that Russia's demands have actually been around for a long time. "These demands are nothing new. Russia has been making them since 1945, Sheikh stressed. However, with the Trump administration's recent moves, Europe is not only afraid that the US is abandoning them, but also worried that Washington may have aligned itself with their adversary.